Hey, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Man, it's super hot today. We're under a heat advisory. It's like 107 degrees today on the heat index, and it's just bad. The garden is bad. So I'm going to make a decision today that maybe some of you won't really agree with, but I think I've got to do this. Let's see what's going on today. Okay, well, I'm going to make a final harvest of some of my peppers, and I'm going to show you how to cook a stuffed roasting pepper. That's later in the video. Right now, I want to talk to you about what I'm up to. This garden was put in 2014, these three main beds out here. And ever since that time, I've been doing 3-season gardening, summer, spring, and fall. And it's been going and going and going and going. Well, I think this year I'm going to take a bit of a Sabbath for these three beds. And during this summer season, when I would normally be growing cowpeas and eggplant and letting my peppers go through the season, I think I'm going to give them a fallow year. And that fallow year will help to restore the soil, and I'm going to do some things to help deal with the weeds. I've got a lot of weeds. If you're a believer, and I know many of you aren't, but many of you are, the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verses 10 through 12, talk about how to deal with land in a way that is beneficial to the soil. It says, "For 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its yield, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow." And that's what I want to do here. It's the seventh and a half year here. And I think that's what I want to do here. It says, "The poor, so that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat, you shall do likewise with your vineyard and your olive orchard." And the reason for this, obviously, is to let your fields go fallow so that they can recharge, and that your soil can take in all that organic material that's been growing there. And the Creator was wise and gave his people in those earliest years guidelines for agriculture. And those agriculture guidelines work. Well, you might not have known it in the ancient Israeli times, or in the medieval times as people practiced these practices, but they were good practices, and they were practices, obviously the Creator understands how things are designed in these systems and processes of biology. He designed them. I'm going to let this field lay fallow. I'm going to let it lay fallow and recharge. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a page out of John Moody's book, Winning the War Against Weeds. And I'm going to cover these gardens with black tarps, black weed cloth basically. And I'm going to leave them there until the beginning of October, maybe the middle of October. And what that's going to do is give these garden beds an entire summer of scorching heat. And that will help to kill off the weeds and the weed seeds that are in there. Wait for the wind here. And what it'll do is solarize and heat treat this soil. What I'll do is cut everything out, burn everything down, and then cover it with these tarps. And we're going to do this so that our field can lie in rest for, about 3 months. In that 3 months, we'll see a lot of organic material being turned into the soil. I'm going to put some compost down before I cover them with black weed cloth. And what that'll do is, come October, when I start my fall garden, I can just punch holes in that weed cloth and plant right into there with my starts. This does not mean that we're going to stop gardening and stop our gardening videos. It just means that these three beds will be fallow for about 3 months. And I think that'll help them a lot. I think it'll help with my weed issue. It's been 7 years, 7 whole years without any really serious weed treatment here. So that's what we're going to try. But first, I've got some peppers I'm going to harvest, and I'm going to cook some stuffed peppers tonight, and I invite you to come along with me on that. All right, look at these beauties. These are called mountain roaster peppers, and they are pretty good size. Just like that. That's what we're looking at. Now, they're a little weepy and wilty because they have not been watered very much during this drought. And so I've got some peppers here that are good stuffing size, but they're just about ready to be done with their life cycle. They're getting a little bit wrinkly on their skin. Well, we're going to take these in and stuff them. This is a good stuffing pepper. Some of them are already dried on the vine here, and some of them are really small, not really useful for stuffing. But we're going to take them all in because these peppers, along with the rest of this garden bed, well, they're coming out, so we're going to take them and harvest. Yeah, I've got some others over here. These are more stuffing size. These are way down here. Look at that. These are huge, these peppers. It's nice to see. And I've been harvesting these peppers for months now, at least 2 months. So we'll get a few of these in that are harvesting size and stuffing size, like that one. That one might be marginal, but yeah, there we go. Let's see if we got any others. Well, while I'm out here, I might as well harvest my cayenne peppers that are ready to be taken in. I got a bunch of them. I have a Korean pepper. I've harvested about 2 quarts of those Korean peppers. Man, look at all that. There's tons of peppers on this plant. We'll leave these heavy laden pepper plants until they ripen up. And as I lay down my weed cloth to let these beds go fallow, I'll cut a hole and let these pepper plants stick around. Yeah, it's hard to cut these things down. I'll let them grow. My bell pepper plant right here, man, it's got tons of bell peppers on it, but they're small. But I'll let them come to ripeness too. I've got some jalapenos here. They're nice and ripe. So we'll throw those in. I can always use jalapenos here and there. This plant is laden with new jalapeno peppers. I'll let those grow through the summer as well. But we'll go ahead and harvest these that are ripe. This one here, this one has some sun damage. It's a little sun scald, which makes that a little bit soft. You can still use the rest of this pepper though, just cut around that part. Yeah. So if you got a pepper that's all curled up on itself like that and it's going to be tough to stuff, just split it. Just split it just like so. And what we can do is fill it like that. Put our stuffing right in here and bake it like so. So let's get our peppers prepared. Here's the benefit of cutting them in half. When you have a pepper that has some damage from the sun and some damage at the end, just chop that end off just like so. And you can split it. You can split it so that your damaged section is on one half and you don't have to use that if you don't want. So we'll put that to compost, and this section we'll use. Now on a sweet pepper like these roasting peppers, that pith in the middle is not hot. There's a lot of flavor in there. We'll just leave it in. I do have a jalapeno here I'm going to try and stuff. See what it's like. Jalapeno poppers are a popular dish, but this one's going to be stuffed with meat, not cheese. So let's get our pith out of the jalapeno so it's not blazing hot. Now wash your hands really good, because you don't want to go touching your private parts after you've cleaned out some hot peppers, or rubbing your eyes. There's my wife laughing at me, because it's true. It's true. Don't do it. Don't touch your privates after you've been cleaning out jalapenos. We'll have our garlic ready at hand and our mushrooms at hand. The problem is the recipe I'm using is a conglomeration of recipes, and it calls for putting your meat in first and browning it up, and then putting your onions, your mushrooms, and your garlic. The problem with that is if you cook your garlic for a very long time, it's going to turn bitter on you, and your mushrooms are all going to go mush. So I'm going to start with my onions and get them nice and soft before I start browning my meat. I don't mind if the onions go soft. That's caramelization. That releases the sweetness of the onions, and that's what I want in a recipe. So we'll get those going first. Medium-high heat, which to me is high. Always cook on high. Okay, we have our onions with a head start. So we're going to put in 1 pound of ground chuck, ground beef, ground whatever you got, ground deer, ground venison, ground turkey, whatever you got. And we're going to brown this meat until it's crispy. There's no reason to gray up meat and call it brown. If you're like me, you were raised with I love my mother. God bless her soul, but she could not brown meat. My mother would put meat in a pan and make it gray and call that brown. No, you want your meat to be brown. You want that crispiness, that caramelization, and that flavor to be released when the meat actually turns crispy and brown on the edges. So we'll let this cook in here until we achieve that point. Then we'll add our garlic, our mushrooms, and we'll begin moving along with our recipe in earnest. Don't forget salt and pepper. The recipes that I've conglomerated together, if I remember correctly, call for salt and pepper near the end. But I want these to release their flavor during the cooking process. So I'm going to put them in now while I'm browning the meat. Just the salt and pepper, not the herbs yet, just salt and pepper. Again, I have said on my channel before, I kind of cook by the heart. There's no recipe here. You just watch what I'm doing and you make your own version of it. So, yeah, ground beef, ground meat of any kind, onions, salt and pepper. Then we're going to add some garlic. Then we're going to add our mushrooms and mix that all together. Get it nice and happy and blended together. It's begun to stick to the pot. The edges are somewhat brown. We're starting to get our meat to be a little bit crispy here. That's what we want. Right now you can put in your mushrooms and garlic. There's our garlic. And here's our mushrooms. I'm not going to put them all in. Let's see, maybe I will. Yeah, let's put them all in there. And we'll just let this kind of cook for another 5 minutes or so. Release that garlic scent. When you start to smell the garlic, that real strong garlic aromatic flavor, that's the allicins in the garlic beginning to release, and you know your food will be flavorful. Okay, now that our beef, our meat, whatever you're using, is nice and brown, the onions are transparent, the mushrooms are nice and tender, and the garlic is nice and fragrant, I've turned off the heat. What I'm going to do now is add some tomato sauce. This is tomato sauce from last year, 2021. This is my Edox F1 cherry tomato that I made tomato sauce from last year. I've got a video, and if you're interested in how to make sauce out of cherry tomatoes, well, I'll link it right up there. In we go. The recipe calls for a lot of tomato sauce and diced up tomatoes, and I'm not sure that I'm going to need them all, so I'm just going to put that in. It calls for a can of diced tomatoes. I think that's going to be too much liquid. It calls for some tomato paste. You know, I don't know that we need the whole can. Let's see what we get with tomato paste. The diced tomatoes, you know, I'm going to leave those out. But it is hard to go wrong with tomato paste, so we'll get a can open and we'll put it in there and see what we get. I'm looking for something I can stuff into my peppers. Not something that's going to be so stiff I can't stuff, but also not something so liquid that it's just going to run out everywhere. And in the end, you want something that's got some juice in it. So let's see if we can mix this up. See what we get. Mix that paste in there, get it all mixed up. I imagine I want something that I could even put through a piping bag if I was so inclined. And I think that's what we got here. We still have to mix our rice in. I've got some brown rice cooking, and when that's ready, we'll mix that in as well and see what we get consistency wise. There's going to be far too much filling for the few peppers I have. This would fill 8 or 9 big bell peppers. It does smell really good though. We're going to add some seasoning to it. I've got some Italian seasoning right here. And I've got a little bit left in my jar here, so we're just going to use all of that. That's about 1/2 of a teaspoon. And out of my fresh one, I'm going to add just a little bit more. So maybe a 3/4 of a teaspoon. Okay, the recipe calls for 2 cups of brown rice. That's what I've got right here in my rice cooker. So we're going to take 2 cups of brown rice, 2 cups cooked, and we'll add more if it looks like it needs more. Let's get this mixed up and see what we got. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, I think that's going to be good. Yeah, so there we go. A nice kind of gloopy stuffing, just like that. That's what we're after. It's not going to focus, is it? There it is. That's what we're after, about that kind of a consistency. All right, let's put some of this in our peppers. Get our oven preheated to 350. All right, now pretty easy. We're just going to take some of our stuffing and lay it into our peppers. Just like so. It's going to be a lot of slop over, a lot that's going to get out and fall over. That's okay. This is kind of more of a open-faced sandwich than a burrito, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm just going to stuff some of this in here. These peppers will roast up real nice in our oven. Add some flavor to this whole thing. Some of these skinny peppers are a little bit difficult, but that's okay. We can work it in with our fingers. Nice. There we go. Alright, let's put this in the oven. About 30-40 minutes. We'll check on it. When the peppers have become tender, it's ready to eat. Not pretty, but it'll work. Alright, our peppers have been in for 30 minutes. We're going to put some cheese on them. We're going to lay some mozzarella here on our peppers. Ideally, I would have some Parmesan, but that's in an ideal world. And I don't know about you, but I don't live in an ideal world. I live in reality. And reality is that I have mozzarella, and that's what we're going to use. Put some cheddar on here if you wanted to, but we're going to use what we got. Going to give it another 5 to 10 minutes in the oven, just enough time to melt this cheese, and I think we'll be done. All right, it's time. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Look at that. All right, the thing with mozzarella cheese is it does not allow you to have a tidy dish. So this is real stringy, real messy. But there we go. There's our first bite of a stuffed mountain roaster pepper with beef, onions, garlic, and mushrooms. Still hot, right out of the oven. Wow, that's very good. That pepper is like a cracker on which you put a good dip, and that stuffing that we've put in the pepper is like a good dip. It's very tasteful. It's I can taste that tomato in there. My tomato sauce last year was very tart, but I put it in there in such a way that it wasn't overpowering. We didn't use too much of it. We didn't add more tomato, and I think that was the right choice. We've got a good stuffing here. This stuffing is just the right consistency to stick on a fork here. Whoa, and I'm dropping it, making a mockery of what I just said. The stuffing, the cheese, it's messy. It's a very big mess. I'm going to make a huge mess if I try to do this pretty on the camera. So I'm just going to eat it as it is. That stringy mozzarella, it's so good. That stuffing is like very tomatoey, very beefy. Almost like pizza. And that pepper, wow. I'm really glad I grew these this year. They've not been the star of my garden in terms of, I haven't been highlighting them that much. They've just been kind of growing in the background. But they've always been a gem of red light back there in the background. And now that I've gone and focused on them, man, they're very good. Mountain Roaster roasting peppers. It's a sweet pepper, they're a big pepper, and very good. Again, it's not the prettiest. I mean, that's not what you want to put on a food channel, or, you know, if you're on the Food Network, that's not the photography you want. That is not food photography. What this is a very delicious meal that I made from my garden that is yummy. And I can't tell you how delicious that pepper is. Grow yourself some mountain roasters, you won't be disappointed. Well, my friends, there we go. That's what we're doing with our garden right now. We're harvesting peppers, just about the only thing that's producing in this super heated weather. And now you know a little bit about what we're going to do moving on. We're going to let our beds lay fallow. We're going to take a little bit of a Sabbath rest. And we're going to let our gardens go through the next 3 months covered over. And maybe the sun's going to help us with our weed problem. That's my hope. But in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy this meal. Hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Happy gardening to you, happy cooking to you, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.